All right, everybody. I am super excited to have today's show where I'm going to be bringing on a friend of mine. He is a fantastic seller, but as well as a brand creator. He's built many businesses. I even talked about his real estate business that he has as well. And I am very, very excited to bring on Scott Volker. Scott, thank you so much for being on the show.
Dustin, man, it's always fun jamming with you. This is going to be a lot of fun. And I love Successfully Unemployed because that's what we are, man.
Absolutely. We are successfully unemployed. Because whenever I say I'm successfully unemployed, people like their brain has to kind of like turn and like, you're unemployed, but you're successful. Like you're happy that you're unemployed. I'm like, yes, because I have money coming in from other places. So let's jump right into it. How do you make money so that you don't have to have a job and be successfully employed? I mean, if you want to take us back to the beginning, being $7 an hour to seven figures, tell us about that.
Yeah, it's a long journey, but really, I'll get to like how things are happening today because they're always evolving, always changing. You and I talked about a real estate deal that I did, Airbnb market and all of that stuff, which was a whole nother thing. But really, I learned very, very early on that it was going to be hard to more or less chain me down in a cubicle or in a factory. Coming out of high school, I was never brought up with the idea of, Scott, let's start looking at colleges. We're going to go ahead and get your education figured out. My father was raised in the farming world with 9 brothers and sisters, and some of his brothers and sisters only graduated the 8th grade. So it was like I believe his parents actually had kids for more farm hands. I'm not even kidding. I mean, part kidding, but not because they needed more help. Right, on a farm. So when he raised me, I never had that idea. The idea was, Scott, you're going to learn a trade and you're going to go out there and make an honest living and you're going to support your family. Like that was it, right? And so when I graduated, I thought that I was going to go work for this printing company, Quad Graphics. They print. They're still in business today. They print for some of the largest magazines, Golf Digest, People, like all of that stuff. And so I got a job there. I got an in by one of my other employers. Their husband worked there. So they said, hey, why don't you go there? You can learn a trade. And at the top of the level, if you're a first pressman, you can make up to $70,000. This is back 1992, right? So you're talking, it was good money. And so that was my goal, but it's going to take me about 8 years to get there. Well, I was in there, Dustin, for literally about, 24 hours. And I realized that I was in a factory. And I felt claustrophobic. I felt like I couldn't run if I wanted to get out of there. Like I felt trapped, right? I didn't like the environment, but I stuck it out for 9 months. 9 months. And I learned very quickly that I did not want to be more or less in a building all day long. And I was working 7 at night to 7 in the morning. And I was only like 18, 19 years old. So my father gave me an opportunity and he said, hey, we have a construction company. It was him and his partner, and they got let go by General Electric, which they got laid off. So as for them to make some extra money while they were laid off, they decided to start this little side business. Well, they wanted to grow this thing, so they offered me a position. And my father said, how much is Quad Graphics paying you? And I said, I think it was like $6.40 an hour. He said, I'll tell you what, we'll sweeten the deal. We'll pay you $7 an hour. And you can come work for us. And you can help us build this company. And here was the thing that got me most excited. Scott, one day you could own this company that we're building. Now, Scott's going to be a business owner, right? Well, fast forward a little bit. My father and his partner, they were friends for a while, but it was like a bad marriage, literally. And I remember him when I was a little kid, my father's partner, and he's always good to me and stuff. And we worked together, but then it was just different. And so I'm not going to go through the whole story. I've got a book that I wrote, The Take Action Effect. It goes through the entire story. It's also why I'm a little jaded on partnerships because I've seen what happens. But I worked with my father. I worked up the ranks. I worked there for at least 7 or 8 years building this company. But I realized pretty quickly that I was not going to own this company. And so from there, I said, you know what? I can't work for someone else. I got to work for myself. So that's where my wife and I had this idea of starting a photography business. And we had young kids at the time. We had a 2-year-old and a 4.5, 5-year-old. And we were getting pictures taken. So I was like, my wife said to me, hey, what do you think about doing this? I think we could do a better job. I like photography, but I don't know anything about it. So the internet wasn't really, it was a thing, but it wasn't like YouTube wasn't like big. So we learned by books and all of this stuff. Long story short, we did start that business. 18 months later, I left my father's company and we supported ourselves. on that brick and mortar. We grew that for probably 6 or 7 years. And then we were pregnant with my 12-year-old now. And that's when we decided to get into the online world. And I started to kind of dabble in eBay. I started to dabble in that world, and I made a few sales. And we can get into some of those if you want later. But that's what really woke me up and said, holy crap, there's something here. And I did my first product launch, followed Jeff Walker's plan, the whole thing. Did like 12 grand in like 2 days. And it was like, this is like mind blowing. And then that's what opened up my eyes to the online world. And then that got me to where I am today. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, but there's a lot to dig in, I know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to definitely touch on really quickly for a couple seconds on partnerships. I'm not a partnership guy. I've done it in the past. I've literally done a few partnerships in the past. Not saying anything bad about the other people. It's just when you could do it all yourself, why would you bring on a partner? And the big thing comes down to, if you have a partner, you get half of the profits, but you get 100% of the liability. And so it's just like, anyways, long story short, I personally don't do any more partnerships. But now coming from, you're working $7 an hour, which is great back then, definitely. And then now you're starting your own business. You're then jumping into online business. Now, at what point did you say, all right, walk us through the thought of, I'm quitting and I'm going all in with just being me and my wife and just doing this. Tell us the thought and the thought process, because we're just normal people. You and I are normal people just doing normal things. And then we're just kind of saying, you know what? We can do this without getting a paycheck from a job. Let's take the leap. Tell us about the experience and how your wife felt and all that.
And it's actually, that's a great point, because it's a big leap, right? But here's the one thing that, and again, I'm going to kind of switch into Scott teaching mode here in a minute. What people need to do is they need to realize that you have a safety net most of the time. Okay. If you've been in the working force at all, right, you have a skill set of some kind that you probably could fall back on. And I call these our safety nets. They're built-in safety nets. So if for some reason, I had this in my mind, I said, you know what, if we make this jump and I leave my job and I don't have that income, it's going to be scary. But I could always do a side job, right? Because I was in the construction world. So I could always go out and do a kitchen remodel. I could go out and do a deck on the back of someone's house. Like I could do all this stuff, make an extra $3 to $5 grand to pay the bills. I could do it. And let me just say that I never had to do that. But I had it there if I needed to. But the switch was this. We decided to build this thing for just to supplement the income. It wasn't even us building the photography business to be the main income stream. But as we started to do it, we started to switch into like, wow, we're starting to get really busy. We're starting to get well known in our area. People are starting to come to us versus the top, photography studios in our area. They're coming for my wife. They're coming for me, the funny guy that jumps up and down and makes kids laugh. Like that's what they were coming for, Scott and Lisa. And so once we seen that, we said, okay, this is starting to grow. My wife came to me. She says, listen, Christmas is coming up. It's our busiest time. We've been at this 18 months. I think it's going to be busier than last year. We're already getting calls. We already have people that are coming that want to come. That I don't know if I'm going to be able to fit them in if you're not home. And I'm like, what do we do? And she's like, I think you need to leave. I think you need to leave the job. And I said, really? And she goes, yeah. And so I did the math. I said, if we can make 10 grand in the next 8 weeks and I can bank that, that'll hold us until we figure things out after Christmas season. And that was my mindset. So I did all the math. If we have, 15 customers coming in here and they do this and they pay us this and, all of that stuff, it kind of made sense. So I said to my wife, I go, let's do it. So I literally went into my father's office with his partner. And I remember I told my father beforehand, he was happy for me because he was actually staying there with his partner in the business, trying to make it work because he felt me. He felt he needed to stay there for me because I had a family and he didn't know I wanted to leave. And so he was like, yeah, go. Like, great. I think that's great. And so my father's partner, it was the best day of my life. I walked in there and I sat down and I said to him, his name was Milt. I said, Milt, listen, I just want to give you my 2 weeks notice. I'm going to be leaving. And he was like in shock. And he's like, what are you going to do? And I go, well, Lisa and I, we've been doing a photography business and we're going to give that a full-time go. And he's like, really? You're going to be a photographer? And I'm like, and he looks at me as the guy that's, doing roofs and I'm doing all this remodel. Who are you? So long story short is I walked out that day, never looked back, but that was scary. It was on November 1st. It was the year of 9/11. That was crazy. And I remember my last house that I actually did work on. I can still see it. So I left, and it was scary as heck. But man, I'll tell you what, Dustin, when I walked down my stairs, and every morning I was out the door by 6 o'clock in the morning to go to the shop to get all my guys going. I had about 16 guys that I was over top of. And I remember walking down the stairs, making my cup of coffee, looking out my back window. We had a big giant field, 2 acres. And I remember saying, wow, is this really going to work? Right? Like, this feels amazing. And I've been unemployed ever since.
That's and successfully unemployed. Now, I have not, it's somewhat similar. My dad had a construction company, and all through high school and even into college, I was working on the hot slab of like 105 to 110 degree heat, building frames and working on I was literally building houses. That's a big reason why I got into real estate, just because I loved homes, I love houses. But, 2 guys like us that were just working for our dads, working in a construction company for our dads can actually become really successful and employed and really wealthy. Anybody can do this. Now tell me about, I know you have a 6-step process that you can help somebody build a business, building a brand, and all that sort of stuff. Let's walk through that process. So what is this process, and what is the outcome that we're going to get? And then we can go through the steps.
Okay. Because there's a lot we can cover here. This is what I want to do. Okay. So a lot of people, they see opportunities, or they see like a get rich quick thing, and they get all excited, right? And I've been down that road. I'm sure you've dabbled in that road. We all are. It's like, oh, that looks great. Like, cool. So what I really want to say is, it's funny how things kind of come full circle. So when I first got into the online space, we were selling these wooden bridges on eBay. Okay. And these wooden bridges, the reason why I knew that these wooden bridges were selling was because we were looking for them for our studio, for a little cedar garden bridge. And we seen that they were selling. And so anyway, we repackaged them up. We bought them for 30. We sold them for $130. It was great. We put our kids through private school. It was great. So I understood product could sell, but then I started to realize that I wanted to share with other people what we were doing. So it came down to attention. Okay. It's all about attention. So if you get attention, we call that traffic, eyeballs, it's going to be a lot easier to eventually sell someone that's targeted properly with the right stuff. I have followed that model all the way back to when we were in the brick and mortar photography business. I built a little email list there. We'll talk about email list building in a minute. I built a little email list in Outlook Express where I would do a blind copy to everyone else so everyone wouldn't see their emails. And that's how we would book all of our like sessions, and we would book them out quick. But it all comes full circle, because what happened to me about 5 years ago, and what also launched my podcast, The Amazing Seller, is I started to dabble, as we are entrepreneurs, I started to dabble back into the physical products world with Amazon. And so I started to see an opening here. I started to see an opportunity. So here I am running our photography business. We're doing our online photography business. I got a membership site running. Everything is running great. But I'm dabbling over here, and all of a sudden revenue-wise, I put up a product and I started selling it. And in 90 days, we made over like 40 grand. And I'm like, holy crap. Like, I got to pay attention to this. So then my brain started saying, well, wait a minute, Scott, you know all about attention. You should probably share this with other people and document that and see if you can get somewhat of a following or somewhat of attention. And I knew that there was a way to monetize. I just didn't care at that point. So a lot of people, this is a mistake, and I want people to really understand this. If you're only thinking about the money, it's going to be really, really hard to be successful at anything that you do. Because the money doesn't come instantly. It's going to take work. Just like you with a piece of real estate, Dustin. You buy a piece of real estate, you don't buy it, put the down payment, all of a sudden the next month you get a positive ROI immediately. You got to put a little bit of money into it. You got, there's some up cost or some time. And then from there, you'll start to see the return. It's the same difference here. So I want people to understand that I've really been down both roads. And the road that's always worked is if you understand your market, if you know how to attract the market with the right thing or things, the right content, right, whatever. And then from there, you show up as a resource. You show up as someone that's not just an authority, because you don't have to be an authority. You just have to be someone that's either documenting the process or you learning. So through that, that's where you can start making recommendations, whether that's an affiliate product, whether that's an Amazon, your own product. So to me personally, it's always about the market, the attention in the market, and then from there, what does the product buy? But there's a whole process to validate it, to see if it's really a viable market, if it's too niche, and all of that stuff. So I just wanted to be very, very clear on that.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. If you have any, and this goes for every single thing that may be sold. I mean, physical product, a service, or literally anything, if you don't get that message out, if people don't even know about it, how are they going to buy? So I completely agree. I think marketing is not just marketing, getting that word out there, getting people to know that you're in existence. So that's a great, great point. So go ahead and continue.
Yeah. So I'll use a couple of different examples here. So, and again, I want people to kind of retrace the steps, because that's what I always do, right? I'm always modeling what other people are doing successfully. And I'm not trying to recreate the wheel. I might put my own spin on it. And there's no one that's going to compete with you being you or me being me, right? I've got a certain amount of energy. You've got a certain amount of energy. Someone that's got a different personality, whatever, you're going to attract the right people by just being authentic. So when we were in the photography business and I started to want to get into this online space, and I wanted to start teaching people what we were doing. Now, I self-taught myself Photoshop, okay? I bought a book. I actually got it on my shelf to remind me back there. It's about 4 inches thick. I didn't like reading, still don't really like reading, but I read it and I digested it and I just put it to use. And then now I know how to use Photoshop. So I started teaching people what I was doing in my photography studio using Photoshop, creating templates, doing photo restorations, like all of that stuff. So all I did is I'm like, you know what? I'm hearing these people talk about giveaway free value, lead magnet, whatever you want to call it, give them something of value and build the relationship. And just do that. And I'm like, all right. So YouTube was really, really young at the time. So I just started publishing stuff, telling people who I was, a little bit about my story. My wife and I was a contractor, how I, left my job to do full-time photography and all this stuff. I just shared my story because it's true. And then from there, I started teaching people how I did it and how they could do it too. And so over time, I built up this audience. And at the time, it was like, I think 6 months, we had about 1,000 people on an email list. So before I get into what happens next, if you're listening to this, to kind of put this into action, what is something right now that you're either really good at or you want to be really good at? Because either one of them can work. And the first thing that you need to do is identify if that market is out there. If it is, then you want to validate that the market is actually buying things. And there's ways that we can do that. And I'll share that here in a minute. So what I did is I just put out content. And I didn't have any way that I was going to monetize. And then on that 1,000-person list, after about 6 months, I let them know that I was going to possibly put something together that would teach them what I was kind of teaching as like an overview. And a whole bunch of people said, yeah, I would love it. So what I did is I put together these templates into a little package that I was selling these CDs on eBay at the time. I bundled all those together. There was 10 CDs with all of these PSD files, Photoshop files. And then there was training of me teaching them it. And I did product launch formula, Jeff Walker style. I bought his course way back in the day for $2,000, put it on a credit card, hoping that I was going to be able to make this thing work. And long story short is, built the relationship, got the attention, about 1,000 people on an email list, and we did $12,000 in 2 days. Okay? That was like mind-blowing. So fast forward, right? Did the same exact thing when I launched my membership. I have a membership that is for photographers. I launched it the same exact way. Okay. Now move into the podcast. Started the podcast. 52 episodes before I ever made one dime. Most people would have did 10 and said, this isn't working. I'm not not doing it anymore. Right. So the model is know the market, know what they're looking for, niche down somewhat. Don't be like, you'll serve everybody, right? And then from there, help them and then see what they need, what they want, and then offer it to them. Like that is it in a nutshell, Dustin.
I love that. And I found that the more people that I serve, the more people that I just really help, I look to see how I could serve them as opposed to how I can get money out of anybody. Like with my rental properties, the more properties that I have that I can serve and give people good quality, really nice housing at a really good price, that's going to help them and their family. they're going to want to stay in the property for a very long time. Same thing with master passive income, where I teach about real estate and rental properties. I just keep giving and giving and giving. Eventually people are going to say, man, this guy knows what he's talking about. He cares about me, and I want to work with him. So they get into my course, they get into my coaching and all that sort of stuff. But I completely agree. The more people that I serve, the more things that I give, the more things that I serve, or people that I serve, the better my business gets. So what's the next step that we should be continuing on?
Let me give you another example, because I think examples help to kind of demonstrate. Like Cassidy, good friend of ours. We have a mutual friend, Cassidy, and she has a blog on succulents, right? Like how to grow succulents. So she has built this thing. She was a photographer who said, I don't want to do freelance anymore. I want to build this online thing. And so she started to post her stuff. Fast forward 5-6 years now, 6-figure business, tons of traffic, like 500,000 plus uniques per month, like just crazy, right? In the succulent market. So what I want people to understand and start to do themselves is think about something that you could publish or create content, whether that's written content, video content, podcasts, whatever. What is it that you could show up and help someone with, or document? So here's another story. Another buddy of mine, Jesse, who he teaches, but he documents how to distill alcohol, right? So he's like, you know what? I don't know how to distill alcohol, but for the next year, I'm going to document my process on learning how to do, distilling alcohol. Well, his goal was to get 500 subscribers on YouTube. Didn't even do a blog, didn't do anything. He's like, I'm just going to show up. He listened to my podcast because I mentioned in there, I said, if you're stuck, just show up 52 weeks a year, one piece of content a week, just one, and serve your market. And he did that. And he said, if I can get 500 subscribers, I'll be happy. He got 15,000 in a year. And I just looked, it's been probably about 8 months since that I had him on my podcast, maybe a year. He's at 40,000 now. So it's growing. And the last I checked when he was on my show, he was making over $1,000 passively just from the YouTube traffic, right? And now that traffic's doubled. So it's probably doubled as well, if not more. So again, just to give people an idea of what we're talking about. Now, if you want to, I get a lot of people that say, Scott, you talked about like launching products on Amazon. Like that's kind of what Scott's been known for, right? In the online space over the past, 5 years. I've pivoted, right? Because I've seen that the market's changing. Here's the thing. If you're listening to this and you're hearing other people say, launch a product on Amazon and you're going to build a business, it is very risky. I don't recommend it. What I do recommend doing is taking your brand or your business, and then if you want to sell a product, a physical product, and your own product, build it around your brand, and then yes, use Amazon as the channel. Absolutely. Because it's very risky. And I'll give you an example of what just happened to one of our Academy members. He had a product that he launched in a separate market that he was not in. He's like, I'm just gonna go. I see the numbers are looking great. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna launch this thing. And so he launched it. I can't say what it is because there's a patent infringement thing. So he basically launched it and he sold like 1,000 units probably within a month. Okay, pretty good. So he's like, this is working great. So he's like, I'm going to order 3,000. So he orders 3,000 units, right? And now remember, when you're in the physical product world, you're putting out money. Like you're talking like $5, $10 a unit, right? So he's throwing down some cash. Sells through those 3,000 even quicker. I'm going to double down, he says. 15,000 units he wants to order. So he orders 15,000 units. The minute they land, he gets a notification from Amazon that there's a patent infringement on his product. Dustin, he's sitting on $60,000 in inventory. Okay? Now, solutions, there's a few solutions. We can either pull the inventory, we can try to modify it so it's not a patent infringement. We can either try to contact the person who has the product and see if they'll buy it or see if they'll share a profit rev, whatever, or we got to take a $60,000 bath, right? We got to take that loss, right? This is what I'm talking about. So now for the past 2 years, Scott's been preaching, don't just do that. If you're going to do that, you got to have these other channels in place. You got to have your own traffic source. Traffic equals money. Okay? Traffic equals money because the attention, the right traffic, you can monetize that. You can monetize it through ad networks. We have a brand that we've been building for about almost 2.5 years now. We have ad money coming in, AdThrive, Mediavine, which is basically like an AdSense, a Google AdSense. we're generating $3,000 to $4,000 passively without selling a product. It's just from traffic, 150,000 to 200,000 uniques, just like Cassidy is. So I want people to look at this as the easiest way to get started is to find a market, find out if there is traffic in that market, and there's different ways, there's different tools that you can use. And actually, I go through this extensively, and I know you said I can share a resource, and I'll do that at the end. But you actually go through and you look at the numbers and you go, okay, there is potential here. There's other brands that have validated it for me too, but there's some openings, there's some holes that I can possibly fill. So that's the other thing. Can you build an email list? I am big on email lists. Email lists are not dead. If anyone's telling you that email lists are dead, they're lying to you. Because they want to push a bot, a chat bot or something program. Emails have been really, really effective in a variety of markets that I'm in. So I always say email is number one. And so you can speed up the process because a lot of people say, Dustin, they go, building this content takes time. It takes time to create it, but then it takes time for it to get indexed with Google and to get the traffic. You're right. But why not build the email list and then let the people know that you have something new, and then we can spike that, right? We can then amplify that content. So that's our whole model. It's finding the market, identifying a sub niche if you can, and then serving that with content, written content. If you can add video, that's great. And then just showing up on a regular, consistent basis, building the email list, communicating with the email list, letting them know about your content. And then from there, also having buckets of content. We call them our buckets of content, where you have a questions bucket, where people are asking, common questions that you're going to answer on the blog. And then you have, from there, how-to articles. And then you also have product-based articles. The product-based they're going to lead to money, right? Because people are searching for best routers for woodworking, right? Well, I'm going to give them the 5 best routers for woodworking in 2020, right? And the next year, I'm going to do one for 2021 and 2022, right? So I'm going to always stay up on that stuff. So that's the formula. It really is. And it's worked for me time and time again. I have students it's worked for time and time again. But there is a shift happening in the Amazon world. So anybody that's listening that's in the Amazon world, it's getting even more competitive. There's Chinese sellers coming in, which it's easier for them to sell. They're undercutting. There's a lot of counterfeit. It's a whole crazy zoo, to be honest.
There's something that there's so many awesome things you just said in that, for short 5 minutes, but you gave so much great content. If anybody, you should go back and listen to all that, because there's so much in that he said. One thing that absolutely needs to be reset again is traffic equals money. That's absolutely, bar none, the best thing is that when you have traffic, when people find you, and what I love is even Facebook ads are okay, but in my opinion, I love when Google sends me people. When somebody's searching for real estate rental properties and how to invest in real estate, and they come and find me, Google, they do a really good job at their business. Their business is putting the right content in front of the right person, and they bring the right people to me. When I grab their email address, I give them, hey, this is my free course. Start learning how to invest right now. Give me your email address. I'll email it to you. But what I do is from that, once I grab that email address, and going along with your point, I love grabbing email addresses. I love helping people, because when I have their email address, I can serve them better by giving them great content. Now, I'm not in the business of just collecting email addresses. I'm also in the business of monetizing or providing a service so that they can say, hey, I actually want this. Let me buy. Now, it's not high pressure or anything. It's literally, hey, I have this. If you need it, it's here for you. So absolutely. And so everything that you said, there's so many things. And one thing you talked about with Cassidy with the succulents business, she literally said instead of just being succulents, which for me, there's, millions of plants, but she's niching down just to a succulent. But she said if she would do it all over again, she would niche down even more and just be indoor succulents. I'm like, wow. Like, that's like the nichest, smallest thing that you could ever do. And she's like, I would make more money doing, or I don't know if she would necessarily say that, but she would do that. And so, if anybody listening and watching this, if you're thinking, man, I have something that I want to share to the world, and a big point that Scott, that you made, even if you want to learn something that you could eventually teach, that is also like, you're always going to be one step ahead than somebody else. Like if you're, out of 10, if you're on level 2, somebody else is starting at 1. You could be helping those ones. And as you get to an 8, a 9, a 10, you get those other people that are building up behind you, just like that person with the distillery. That's so fantastic. I love that idea. And that story because you're building it in. You're, instead of creating, you're documenting as you're going and bringing people along with you. So that is so fantastic. So this whole entire process, I completely agree. And especially if you're making your money solely through Amazon, or you're making money solely through YouTube, or solely through Facebook, or if you're making money solely through somebody else's platform, be careful because that could literally be, that rug can be pulled out from under you and you're stuck. And so we want to build a brand. And that's what you have, is the Brand Accelerator. Well, you just had a conference recently, right? The Brand Accelerator Live conference. Tell us about that.
Yeah, Brand Accelerator Live was kind of created because I was at an event myself. And, everyone always comes up to me that has been listening to the podcast for the past 5 years, and they know me as, Scott, the Amazon guy. So they're like, hey, Scott, your session was great and everything, but, this conference was great. It was an e-commerce, conference. What is the next Amazon event you would go to? And I go, well, I wouldn't go to another Amazon event. I think you've already got enough of what you need. What I would do is I would go to a digital marketing event. Right? Learn that, because your competition isn't doing that for these Amazon sellers. And then I was like, boom, like we need a conference that teaches more about that side of it, not just how to really leverage Amazon, which we do still teach that. Now, I didn't, again, here's one of the things, stepping out of your comfort zone. I was like, man, I don't want to put on a conference. That's a lot of work. It's a lot of responsibility. You're signing your name on the dotted line for a lot of money. I'm like, man, I don't know if I want to do this, right? And so a guy that was one of my listeners, who was a referee, by the way, who did it on his spare time, he started his business from his referee money so he didn't take away from his family. And now I'm happy to say he's left his job. Actually, last year, he announced he left his job in the corporate world, and now he runs a full-time e-commerce business. So, but he was the one that said to me, he's like, Scott, I used to work in the hotel industry doing conferences. Have you ever thought about doing a conference? And I'm like, well, kind of. And he's like, why don't we do one? Like, I'll help you with everything. And I'm like, well, you'd have to help with just about everything. And so honestly, that's how it forms. So connections also, guys, is huge, huge. I never would have did my conference if it wasn't for him. And now we've done it. We did one this last year, over 200 people attended, flying from all over the world, Dustin. Like I had people there from Australia, from Germany, crazy. And so anyway, that event is all about brand building and brand acceleration. Now, because of that, and I didn't want to be coined as the Amazon guy anymore, I also have now a new thing that we started called Brand Creators Academy, which is all about that. So to me, it's all about simplifying my life and what I want to be working on. And it's helping people build brands. Part of that is Amazon channel. But so for me, it's helping people on a day-to-day basis inside of my academy. And then like the grand finale is Brand Accelerator Live, where we all come together and celebrate as a community, and we bring in some really great experts and we teach. So that's it in a nutshell. Yeah. That's
fantastic. And I think as more and more people jump on the idea that you can become successful unemployed through many different routes. I mean, I everything from online to literally having a physical business that you're actually doing work in your own town. There's so many different ways that you can be successful unemployed. And I know that two ordinary guys like us that worked in construction for our dads at their companies can actually become extraordinary, and extraordinary by means of not having a job, like not having to work for somebody else, getting our own value from ourselves rather than the paycheck that we get. Because I used to say, somebody said, well, what do you do, Dustin? I would say, oh, I work for, work for the county government. I would do technology for them. Well, I'm immediately telling that person where my worth is put is in my job. And as soon as I realize my worth is not in my job, my worth is in my God, my family, my kids, and what I present to the world. And so what I started doing was I realized that I said, I'm not going to tell anybody what my job is. Even though 100% of my income came from my job, I now tell people I'm a real estate investor. That's what I do. Because that's my value. I place it on myself. Even though 100% of my money comes from my side job, it's a side job, but I'm now an investor. So Scott, you've given us so many great things. Now I want people to be able to reach out to you, to find you, listen to your podcast. So how would they find you? And is there anything, and we already talked, there's something you'd love to give everybody for free?
Yeah, actually, the best way to get in touch with me is if you just go to iTunes, if you're on iTunes or Stitcher or whatever your podcasting app is, and just search for The Amazing Seller, and then you'll find me there. And just listen. And again, it's free. I've done over, this morning I recorded an episode 760 episodes. So yeah, I do 3 a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And again, being consistent, I practice what I preach. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I've never missed an episode in the past almost 5 years now, which is crazy that I'm even saying it's 5 years because it doesn't feel like that long, but 750 plus episodes, we had to get there somehow. So that would be the best way. I love people to kind of, before you would even invest anything in anything that I have to offer, I would actually say, don't. Like, just come and let's see if we're the right match. And then from there, I do have a free resource. If you go to brandcreators.com, so brandcreators.com, you'll go there and you'll see, you will enter your name and email address because I do want to follow up with you. And I will give you the brand growth validation checklist. It's a 5-page, which I would recommend printing it out, and it'll take you through that exact process. And I also have a video training there of you looking over my shoulder as I validate 2 markets. So basically, it's me showing you exactly how I would validate if this is a yes or if it's a no or a maybe. And then from there, I also just recorded a 6-part series on the podcast that takes you through establishing the market and then from there growing the business and into monetization. And that I just recorded, and that it will also be part of that download section when you go to brandcreators.com.
That's fantastic. Now, also your book, Take Action, is that going to be on there that we can purchase as well? Or do we go to Amazon or?
Yeah, that one there. I mean, you can go to Amazon and just search the Take Action Effect and you'll find it. Just recorded the audiobook, which is again, another thing. And again, the book, guys, is really like my story, but it's a lot of lessons and other people's stories along the way. And it's really how to build a brand. It's how to, really how to take action. Because I preach that all the time, Dustin. It's like a lot of people sit on the sidelines. They're like, oh, I want to be in the game, but I don't know. I don't know how to do that play, or I don't know. Like, but you're not in the game, right? I got to get you in the game in order for us to score, right? So in order to get any result, we got to take action. And this right here, this book, The Take Action Effect, it talks about moments in your life that you've probably already done something or achieved something that has made a huge effect on your life. It's had a huge effect on your life. One of mine is, my wife and I have been married for 25 years now, but I wasn't going to go out one night. She wasn't going to go out one night. It just happened that fate brought us together, and now we met, and I never went to that area. She never went to that area. And here we are, and my life would be completely different. The photography studio, that never would have happened if I wasn't upset in my job, and if I seen the partnership kind of going downhill, and then my wife suggesting photography never would have led me to where I am today. That's the take action effect that we all have control over. And I really identify these take action moments to where you can really see them for yourself and go, this is a moment I need to act on. And if I do, it's going to lead me to where I need to go. And that's the book. And I'm really proud of it. It's something, again, a guy that didn't really do well in school. Didn't do good in school, man. I struggled, and wrote a book. Audiobook's coming out in 2 weeks. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. I think it's going to change a lot of people's lives.
Scott, you've been fantastic. You give us so much wisdom in everything. I mean, you gave so much value. I really, really appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming on the Successfully Unemployed show.
Well, I appreciate you, Dustin. And also I appreciate all of the tips and everything you gave me on my real estate stuff. And I'll probably be picking your brain some more, because I'm ready to kind of get back in and maybe do another one in maybe the next, I don't know, 6 to 12 months, probably.
We need to do one sooner than that. I'm glad to help.
Okay. Sounds good, man. I appreciate you, Dustin.
You too, buddy. Take care.
Thanks, man.